Viking raids weren't random chaos. They were terrifyingly precise. Not drunken hordes. Organized, ruthless, and fast. In the next minutes, I'll show you the method behind the fire. You'll see why monks were chosen over forts, how rivers became highways of fear, and the clever tricks that let longships vanish before breakfast. And one tactical move, almost surgical, still confounds defenders to this day. The year 793. Lindisfarne, a monastery on a lonely English shore. Imagine chanting in a low timber chapel, then a shape on the horizon, oars cutting like knives. The monastery was not plundered by accident. It was a target, wealthy, poorly defended, and symbolic. The monks' manuscripts and silver made them irresistible. For the people ashore, the raid arrived like an apocalypse, smoke, shouting, and ships already on their way back to sea. History marks the date. The horror marks lives. Vikings wasn't a single people so much as a way of life that mixed farming, trade, and seasonal war. Archaeological hubs like Burka, Hidba, and Reeb were centers where merchants, shipbuilders, and warriors met. Finds from these sites, weights for silver, scales, Arabic dirhams, and foreign beads, show they were plugged into networks stretching from Baghdad to Byzantium. That means many raiders were also traders, interpreters, and mercenaries. Some served as the Varangian Guard in Constantinople. Others planted farms in new lands. The picture is messy and human. Farmers who took a season to sail, captains who traded at market and raided at dawn. Monasteries stored silver, church plate, and food. Rivers were highways. Longships could slide up narrow channels to reach the heart of a region, bypassing coastal defenses. The Vikings treated shorelines and river mouths the way modern special forces treat choke points. Approach quietly at dawn, strike fast, and disappear down the same waterway. A raid was not a pitched battle. It was a short, violent operation. Scouts picked weak points. Rowers ensured speed. Silence was enforced. Men moved by night or first light, landing where the sun hid defenders' eyes. A well-executed raid could be over in minutes. A quick smash, a haul of goods, and a vanishing act upriver. If resistance stiffened, the ship was the guarantee of escape. That discipline is what turned coastal villages into easy marks. The Longship was technology turned into freedom. Archaeological masterpieces like the Oseberg and Gokstad ships show hull forms built for speed and shallow rivers. These finds reveal exact construction, overlapping planks, robust clinker joinery, and flexible frames that rode choppy seas yet slipped into reed-lined tributaries. The ship you see is not a mythic dragon, but an engineering answer, light enough to be beached and even moved short distances by men, sturdy enough to carry a war party and plunder home. Raids were led by men who understood timing and psychology. They had scouts, signaling systems and rules, no unnecessary slaughter if goods could be taken, no loitering when the tide turned. That command kept lives for later gains, slaves, ransoms, or traders. In other words, they made cold calculations. Axes, spears, sea axes. Crude to look at, devastating in use. Leather and layered hides provided mobility. Conical helmets protected the skull without weighty armor. These were tools chosen for speed, utility, and repairability, not for parading. A single well-placed chop from an axe could end a shield wall. A spear could break a door. They favored practicality over pomp. Here's the part most people miss. The choice of target often happened long before the attack. Traders, runaways, and locals fed the raiders information. A market's patterns, a lord's absence, or a season of lean harvests could all turn a village into a target. Intelligence made the raids efficient. Scouts were not exotic spies. They traded in port towns, questioned travelers, and watched harvest patterns. Archaeology supports this. Long-term deposits at trading centers indicate repeat visits and embedded relationships rather than one-off attacks. Think of a port where a trader learns a market's pace, a priest's schedule, and a coastal family's guard rotations. That knowledge converts a ship's crew into a precise strike force. In several documented cases, raiders returned to the same areas with increasing accuracy. The map in their heads became a weapon. The sight of men running from boats, torches flaring is what survivors remember. A handful of warriors might rush the shore, break into dwellings and scatter. By the time local fighters organized, the longships were already backing out. The raid's tempo was the real weapon. Surprise compressed time into a few brutal minutes. For those on the ground, a raid erased a life's work in hours. Fields burned, seed stores gone, children taken. The emotional scars lasted generations. In many places, population loss, fear, and displacement reshaped demography. But it wasn't pure brutality. Sometimes raiders left villages standing. Sometimes they married into communities and became settlers. Raiding was a tool among trade, diplomacy, and migration. It could be violent, but it also facilitated cultural exchange. Pillaged wealth did not disappear. Silver was melted, re-minted, and circulated. People were sold across networks. Finds of Islamic dirhams in Scandinavian hoards and Arabic silver pierced into torque jewelry tell a story of exchange with the East. Slavery was a major economic vector. Captives became farm labor, household servants, or trade goods shipped to foreign markets. This commerce with violence financed further voyages, creating a feedback loop. Raids supplied capital for trade, and trade supplied intelligence for raids. Over time, coasts learned. Watchtowers, beacons, fortified halls, and local militias. These defenses changed Viking tactics. Raids grew stealthier, more selective, and in time, more political. Defense forced adaptation. Hollywood loves berserkers and horned helmets. In truth, Berserk fury likely describes ritualized states in a few fighters, not whole armies. Horned helmets show up in ritual art, not mass battle. The truth is less cinematic but more interesting. The echoes of these seasons of violence shaped politics. Some raiders became rulers. The Normans in France are the most famous example, and Norse blood and lore appear in place names, law codes, and genetic traces. Others that served abroad, the Varangians, married, settled, and remixed cultures. Archaeology shows hybrid artifacts, Norse-style jewelry with Eastern motifs, burial goods with mixed ritual signifiers. Raids were not an aberration. They were a driver of state formation, trade patterns, and cultural blending. Escape was as engineered as the attack. Longships could be hidden in reed beds, hidden behind sandbars, and occasionally portaged short distances by teams of men. Archaeological accounts and place name studies imply temporary hide sites along estuaries. In several sagas and later chronicles, raiders are described carrying boats over narrow isthmuses, a practical tactic that made shorelines unreliable for defenders. That near-magical disappearance gave raids an almost forensic elusiveness. A child presses into damp reeds, heart thundering. A monk wraps an illuminated folio in linen and hands it across a threshold. A mother's braided hair flicks as she is forced toward the gangplank. Those are the human traces left in the archaeological record. Abandoned tokens, repurposed liturgical metal, and later life names that mark displacement. Not all moments were heroic. There are tales of rookies slipping in mud with stolen parts and being lectured by captains. Small human moments like these remind us the Viking world was lived by people, messy, fallible, and sometimes absurd. So, raids were tactical, targeted, and often economically driven. They reshaped communities, trade, and law. The myth simplifies, the reality complicates, and enriches our understanding. The Viking Age reconfigured Europe. New trade centers rose, dynasties shifted, words and place names changed, and genetic traces spread. In some regions, Vikings became founders of new polities, Normans being a famous example, showing how raiders could turn into rulers. Imagine coasts without the fear of raids. Different fortifications, slower coastal militarization, different trade evolutions. Many political paths would change. Small shifts early on create large ripples later. Raids were ugly, brave, brutal, and rational. They were tools shaped by scarcity, opportunity, and human risk. Remember the calculation. The map, the tide, the scout, behind the flame. Save this video to remember what Viking raids were really like. Subscribe for more real history, no myths, just the raw truth. Thanks for watching.